Chapter 61 10 acres of spiritual farmland, obtained. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dead? He is a monk at the third level of chi refining, that he Jiping whispered. He really couldn't understand, who could a Lingzifu offend? He would actually be killed. Humph. Wei Wuwei snorted coldly and said, You are good at farming, but you have a wrong idea and become a tribulation cultivator. You deserve to be killed. When Chen Mo heard what the other party said, the stone in his heart fell, although I don't know how Fengshe discovered it. Now that Xiao Zhanghua's death has been confirmed, it will be impossible to trace him back. However, this incident also made him a little scared. When I go to Fengshe again next year, I must find a way to create a spell that can destroy corpses and eliminate traces. By then, even the ashes will have to be scattered. Here he was still thinking, but over there Wei Wuwei got down to business. Who is willing to rent these 10 acres of spiritual land? That he was also very unhappy when he got into this job. Not only was he wasting time and delaying his practice, but he also had to talk to a bunch of Lingzifu about this and that. Some of them even bargained. 10 acres, this year, that he Jiping's friend Miao Chen asked in surprise. Yes, of course, you can also split and rent. An increase of 10 acres at a time is really not something that ordinary Lingzifu can afford. What's more, the key is yet to come. I rent 2 acres. Miao Chen was the first to say. He hurriedly pulled He Jiping's sleeve and motioned for him to reserve a few acres, but the other party did not rush to promise, but asked, then, what about the taxes and grain owed for these 10 acres of spiritual land? Of course I have to pay it, Wei Wuwei responded calmly. This is also the reason why Xianfeng personally ordered it. We have already given these Lingji husbands a 1-year deferment of taxes and grain, and there is no way it will be any less in the coming year. As soon as these words came out, everyone who was eager to give it a try suddenly retreated. If this year's tax falls on the newly contracted Ling Jifu, it means that all 200 kilograms of Linghuang rice per mu will have to be handed over. Not only that, the 20 kilograms owed to Fengshe must also be paid. Doesn't that mean that no matter how many acres are planted in these spiritual fields, you can't even get a cent of the grain out of it? If you work hard for a whole year, you will still lose money. Not only that, the more you pack, the more you lose. This kind of thing is impossible for even a smart Lingzifu to do. Spiritual fields, as long as you have the strength, you can still plant them if you want. This year has been a disaster year. Not to mention the delay in cultivation, we will actually lose money next year. Who does this business? Although we won't get any benefits next year, we can get more food every year in the future, right? Wei Wuwei began to follow the instructions. This was the most difficult part of the whole thing. Otherwise, how can we say this is a chore? No one answered. Who knows what will happen next? Will there be drought or insect infestation in the 2nd or 3rd year after planting? Didn't we lose more at that time? That's it. Wei Wuwei began to induce profit. For these 10 acres of land, the market will not charge rent in the coming year. 0.1 acre saves 20 pounds, which is a lot, but even so, we can only guarantee that we will not lose money next year. What about manpower, material resources, seeds, etc.? Not included in it yet. At this moment, He Jiping, Miao Chen, and other monks on the 2nd level of chi refining were hesitant and did not dare to speak easily. As for those at the 1st level of chi refining like Lan Ling, if they want to increase their spiritual field at this time, they really don't know how to write the word death. The scene fell silent for a while. At this time, Wei Wuwei finally turned his attention to Chen Mo. Fellow Daoist Chen, when I saw you just now, you are already at the 3rd level of chi refining, right? It's just a fluke that I got shopkeeper Wei's care. Almost instantly, Lan Ling, He Jiping and others looked sideways. Their slightly parted lips could not hide their surprised expressions. The 3rd level of chi refining? How is that possible? How long has he been practicing? He has actually reached the 3rd level of chi refining. At this speed, I am afraid that I can almost catch up with the monks of Qingyang sect. Is it possible that he is still a young cultivator? He Jiping felt more uncomfortable than eating shit at the moment. 3 years ago, the other party was still a brat that he could control easily. If it weren't for that damn old woman protecting him, I would have taught him a lesson long ago. Unexpectedly, after 3 years, not only did his strength improve by leaps and bounds, but his realm also reached his head. Looking at Lan Ling again, her initial surprise turned into a slight blush. The gaze he looked at Chen Mo became softer, as if he really imagined himself to be the other person's Taoist companion. At this moment, I even thought about the baby's name. The boy's name will be Chen Xiaolan, and the girl's name will be Chen Xiaoling. A smile appeared on Wei Wuwei's face. How about you own 5 acres of these 10 acres of land? If he spoke in person, he wouldn't refuse. At first, I introduced him to be Ling Jifu. It can be said that Chen Mo's achievements today all depend on him. Shopkeeper Wei has already spoken, how can I refuse? Okay, then the rest. Etc. Chen Mo suddenly spoke. Wei Wuwei's face turned grim, showing displeasure. You have already agreed, what? You still want to go back on your word? The corners of the mouths of other Lingzifu around him also raised. Without that diamond, you actually dare to take on this porcelain job? I agreed readily, but how long has it been? 1 breath. 2 breaths. Just regretted it. In line with the idea that watching the excitement is not too big a deal, these Lingzifus want to see how shopkeeper Wei deals with him. Repent? How is that possible? I will not refuse what Brother Wei asked. Chen Mo laughed. Then what do you mean by, wait? Wei Wuwei was a little unsure. Brother Wei, I remember you told me that a head of a robbery cultivator is worth 10 taels of spiritual sand. Robbery cultivator. Head. In a trance, Wei Wuwei remembered that there seemed to be such a thing. Really, that was he asking him for spiritual sand? If Brother Wei remembers it, I will contract the remaining 10 acres. Hiss. The people around took a breath. This kid doesn't want to live. That's 10 acres of spiritual fields, a year of work for nothing. Do you still want to stop practicing? Just when others didn't understand and even thought Chen Mo was stupid, He Jiping suddenly realized something. That's not right. He also took care of these 10 acres of spiritual fields this year. That is to say, he has the ability to plant 15 acres of land at the same time. He Jiping wanted to remind him, but as soon as he turned his head, he met Chen Mo's cold eyes. This look made him feel chilled, as if, as long as he opened his mouth, he would die in a short time. He Jiping swallowed his saliva and swallowed back the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Wei Wuwei chuckled, took out the sachet from his arms, poured out 10 taels of spiritual sand and threw it over. Look at my memory, if it weren't for Chen Dao's reminder, I would have forgotten it. Chen Mo also laughed. No way. Who in the market doesn't know that shopkeeper Wei is generous? Okay. Then these 10 acres of spiritual fields will belong to you. Okay. Chapter 63, Shadow Array, activated. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After feeding the spiritual chickens, Chen Mo spent more than an hour transforming the more than 200 kilograms of spiritual rice left behind into 2 kilograms of spiritual seeds. If calculated based on 2 crops, 15 acres of spiritual land would require 10 kilograms of seeds, and the amount in his pocket was not enough. After doing this, Chen Mo rested for the night and picked up the hoe early the next morning to dig up the ground. When the door opened, Xiao Kang stuck his head out. Obviously, the small wooden house can no longer meet its growing space needs. It needs a larger site and a wider world to run. However, Chen Mo kicked him back. He's only been here for a month. And if he really wants to be released and run away, wouldn't his spiritual sand be wasted? It takes a lot of effort for one person to cultivate 15 acres of land. On the first day, half of the land was turned over, which was about 7 or 8 acres, but there is still plenty of time, so take your time and don't rush. Chen Mo is not in a hurry, but someone is. In the evening, Miao Chen dragged He Jiping, coaxed Lan Ling out, and came to the door. The one who spoke was still Lan Ling, who was coy and fantasizing about dual cultivation. Fellow Daoist Chen, we have been to the 1, 2, and 3 grain stations you mentioned. She didn't go, only Miao Chen did. After turning over a piece of land with a hoe, Chen Mo straightened up, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and asked, what's wrong? They said there are no seeds with higher yield and larger particles. Miao Chen couldn't wait any longer and took the initiative to speak. Oh. Chen Mo responded casually, that was all for today, and he didn't want to plow the land anymore. Ah. We spent the spirit sand, you can't lie to us. Lingsha. As soon as these words came out, Lan Ling's expression suddenly changed. When he looked at Chen Mo, his eyes were full of prayers, hoping that the other party would not say it. However, the next second, hope was dashed. I confiscated your spiritual sand, and telling you the information for free is not enough. Why do you need me to help you buy it? If others don't sell it to you, why don't they come to me? After that, Chen Mo ignored the three people's reactions and walked back to the wooden house. The moment he opened the door, Xiao Kang, who yearned for freedom, fluttered his wings again and tried to fly out of the cage, but before he could take off, he was kicked back by Chen Mo. Outside the house, Miao Chen looked at Lan Ling with an unkind look on his face. You lied to us. No. Lan Ling said firmly. Then why did he say he never asked for spiritual sand? He did it on purpose. He Jiping suddenly said, that kid is a guy who likes to sow discord. His mind instantly flashed back to the time he was tricked into eating aphids. When I think of this, my teeth itch with hatred. Then, that kind of stuff was really bought at number 123 grain station? Miao Chen asked doubtfully. Most likely. Then how about we go take a look tomorrow? Good. The next day, Chen Mo looked through the remaining spiritual fields, then he spent a lot of effort and used a rain-spreading technique to infiltrate the spiritual field. If possible, the seeds can be planted in 2 days. Early on the third day, Chen Mo went out early and went straight to the upper left corner of Ling Tian. He took out a piece of spiritual sand the size of a fingernail, and according to the content recorded in Wangshan photography array, cast a spell to drive it deep into the ground, and then followed the same method to the lower left and lower right. Chen Mo's 15 acres of spiritual land are not completely connected. On the other hand, the 10 acres owned by Wang Lixia and Xiao Zhonghua are so close together that they can be regarded as one piece. Therefore, when covering the upper right corner, Chen Mo went around to the other 10 acres of spiritual fields, and poured the mixed spiritual sand into the lower right, upper left, and upper right respectively. When the preparations were completed, he made a secret with his fingers and used the 6 horns of the formation as a guide to activate the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. After a moment, a mist rose up. The next moment, the formation is complete. Chen Mo had a thought in his mind and took a photo. Then the talent, ripening, becomes self-contained. Immediately afterwards, another 5 kilograms of seeds were buried in the ground. It was already noon when all this was done. He exited the spiritual field and walked around the field ridge. Really, from the outside, his 10-acre spiritual field still looks like it has just been cultivated and has not been sown. Look at the mountain and take photos, look at the mountains and take photos. Although the formation is basic, the effect is immediate. Sprinkle a little water so that the spiritual seeds can absorb the water without being flooded. Chen Mo, who has been planting the land for 3 consecutive years, is already familiar with the road. When these seeds sprout new shoots, there will be another bumper harvest. He took a futon, sat cross-legged in the spiritual field and began to meditate. After more than a month of diligent practice, he has accumulated 9 points of experience at the 3rd level of qi refining. At this rate, if he continues to use low-grade spiritual stones, it will take about 2 years for Chen Mo to break through to the 4th level of qi refining. Compared with the proud son of Qingyang sect, the speed is still ridiculously slow, but for Ling Jifu, who is dotted around Guchenfang City, he can break through from the 3rd level of qi refining to the 4th level of qi refining in 2 years, which can be said to be 1,000 miles. What's more, the 4th level of qi refining is even the ceiling for these spiritual cultivators. The entire Guchenfang City can only be counted on 2 hands. As evening approached, Miao Chen and others came to the door again. They were waiting at Chen Mo's door, hesitating whether to knock on the door, when the real owner walked out from behind them. What's up? The sudden sound startled them. He Jiping took a step back subconsciously, not daring to speak at all. Miao Chen asked, 123 grain station still said they don't have any. 10 taels of spiritual sand per pound, I'll sell it to you if you want it. Ah, Miao Chen's eyes went dark. 10 taels. The Niu family shop only sold 5 taels this year. Do you want it? Get out of here. Chen Mo snorted coldly. He didn't have any good feelings towards his neighbors, especially He Jiping. He was already the most merciful by not beating him to death, but he still appeared in front of him every now and then. Miao Chen and He Jiping looked at each other, and finally gritted their teeth and said, yes. Buy it. Are you serious? Chen Mo turned around and asked. Are you serious? Spiritual sand. He spread his hands. Miao Chen swallowed his saliva, and then took out 10 taels of spiritual sand from his pocket with difficulty. This was his last belonging, but for the harvest next year, he still fought hard. Chen Mo took it back, then looked at He Jiping again, and finally took the other 10 taels of spiritual sand reluctantly. Don't miss it. It's not a small amount. Seeing Chen Mo holding the spiritual sand and walking into the house, He Jiping and Miao Chen were immediately anxious. Where are the seeds? I'll grow them for you. Chen Mo asked back. Ah. Of course I'll buy them at the grain station tomorrow. After saying that, he kicked Xiao Kang, who stuck his head out, and returned to the house. Outside the door, He Jiping and Miao Chen looked at each other. They felt like they were cheated, but they couldn't tell where they were cheated, until Miao Chen said, he seems to have raised a spiritual chicken. Chapter 64. Something big happened. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen Mo told the truth, but no one believed it. Back at the house, he took 20 kilograms of spiritual rice and spent less than 1 stick of incense to get 2 kilograms of spiritual seeds, 20 taels of spiritual sand. Got it. When I was worried, someone would give me a pillow if I fell asleep. For 2 consecutive months, after buying formation outlines and spirit birds, coupled with the consumption of setting up the formation, the spiritual sand in Chen Mo's hand had bottomed out. With less than 4 taels left, the other low-grade spirit stone must not be used. It is the basis for his cultivation. Now, with another 20 taels of spiritual sand in his account, he can continue to squander it. After raising the seeds, Chen Mo practiced magic for a while and then took an early rest. The next day, at dawn, he entered the spiritual field and began to practice. It wasn't until evening that he came out of the photo array and threw the 2 kilograms of seeds to Miao Chen and He Jiping. These 2 people were overjoyed. With these seeds, they would be able to harvest a lot more linghuang rice in the fall, and the losses last year could also be reduced. However, they didn't know that whether the income increased or not was mainly due to the seeds, but to whether Chen Mo was in a good or bad mood. In the following days, Chen Mo practiced qi nourishing techniques in the Lingtian during the day, and at night he would comb his hair, perform magic spells, qi nourishing techniques, and rest. Time passed day by day, and it was more than 3 months in a flash. It's midsummer, and the spiritual fields around Guchenfang City are lush and green, and the rice seedlings are growing very gratifyingly, but there are still 3 or 4 months until the year is hung. From the outside, Chen Mo's spiritual field is the same as other spiritual planters, with rice seedlings reaching half a person's height. But once inside, you will find that it is a completely different scene. Each spiritual rice plant is covered with plump ears of rice, making it look like the autumn harvest is about to begin. Some even showed signs of collapse. With the ripening talent, the growth rate of these linghuang rice was directly doubled. Factors such as sunshine, temperature, humidity, etc. do not have much impact on it. As long as it is not a harsh winter, linghuang rice can grow well. In 3 months, Chen Mo's experience in the 3rd level of qi refining increased by 39 points, and now it has passed the 50 mark. It's not fast, but it's more stable. Due to the doubling of experience for other spells, it is difficult to achieve the same rapid breakthrough effect as before. For so long, only Spirit Snake Body technique has made a breakthrough from proficiency to proficiency, and almost all the others are still lingering around. On this day, Chen Mo continued to practice as usual. Soon, an uninvited guest came near his spiritual field. In order to prevent the real scene in the photo array from being discovered, Chen Mo walked around from the other side and took the initiative to greet the opponent before he got close. I wonder who this fellow Taoist is. That he took the initiative and said hello. The other person has red lips, white teeth, bright eyes, and is dressed in white clothes. He looks to be less than 20 years old. Unexpectedly, the young monk in front of him raised his eyes and glanced at Chen Mo, then looked at him with disdain, and ordered contemptuously, "Go and call all the spiritual cultivators around you." Chen Mo frowned slightly. This rude guy appeared out of nowhere. However, judging from the fact that the opponent's strength should not be weaker than your own, it is better not to start a conflict before you can find out the details of the opponent. At this moment, two figures flashed across the horizon. In an instant, two flying swords came through the air and hovered over Chen Mo and the mysterious boy. Chen Mo raised his head, and after seeing the faces of the two men, an unknown premonition arose in his heart. The visitors were none other than the Xian Peak disciples who had been responsible for collecting grain these years, as well as the mayor of Guchenfang City. Chen Mo's heart almost jumped into his throat. His Wangshan photography technique is just a basic formation. These monks in the late stage of qi refining can definitely see the truth behind the image as long as they use the delusion-breaking technique. However, in the next breath, Chen Mo realized that he was worrying too much. The two monks who descended from the sky paid no attention to him, and did not even glance at his fields. That's right, how could a small spirit planter and a small spiritual field catch their eyes? Junior brother Mo, follow me quickly and don't do anything reckless. Li Shangxian gently tapped his right hand and pointed at the young monk standing side by side with Chen Mo on the ground. This person is a monk who just joined the Qingyang sect last year. When he first entered the big test, it caused a huge sensation in the entire Qingyang sect. 8th level. 8th level high-grade water spirit root. It's a pity that I couldn't go further and reach the 9th level, or even the legendary Tianling root. However, even the 8th level high-grade one is already the most talented person in the entire Qingyang sect since its founding. You must know that the ancestors of the golden elixir are only at the 6th level of the middle level now, and even Bai Jiro and others who are most promising to form elixirs are only at the top level of the 7th level. Such a genius is unprecedented. In order to accept this disciple, Li Chunfeng, the master of Xian Peak, spent a lot of money to get the right to teach for 3 years. If Mo Junqing cannot be allowed to build the foundation within 3 years, then the other party must become a disciple. Other people's disciples. After the opponent entered Xian Peak, Li Shangxian and Xiu, who were originally the most talented, were completely outclassed. The reputation of the first genius has undoubtedly fallen on Mo Junqing. A bunch of garbage Ling Jifu. I don't know what the master thinks. They still want to. Junior brother Mo, that while Mo Jun was speaking softly, Li Shangxian shouted loudly to stop him from speaking out loud. Some words and things can only be known by them. Once these spiritual plant husbands know about it, who will work for them? Who will die for them? Humph! Mo Junqing snorted coldly, turned around and walked away with his hands behind his back. This time, he left his senior brother Li Shangxian behind and acted alone, just to show off his power. He didn't expect that he would be caught up as soon as he left. Master Niu, I'm sorry. Li Shangxian clasped his hands together, which was also an apology for his junior brother. No way. Niu Yuliang also bowed with both hands, saying, Friend Mo is a child of destiny, it's normal to be a little arrogant. It's okay, I'm sorry for not treating you well. Let's talk about this later, let's get down to business first. Okay. Niu Yuliang nodded, the spiritual energy gathered in his dantian, and then his voice was like a bell. All the spiritual plant husbands in Guchenfangshi, 2 hours later, before arriving at the entrance of the market, Xian Peak will have an important announcement. Those who don't come will have their spiritual fields confiscated and be expelled from the jurisdiction of Qingyang sect. Niu Yuliang's voice almost spread throughout the thousands of acres of spiritual fields in the market. The spiritual plant husbands who were originally practicing in farming all looked up and looked over. However, after the announcement, the 3 sword-riding men left together and disappeared, leaving only a group of confused spiritual plant husbands looking at each other, completely unaware of what happened. However, this is the first time in the history of Guchenfangshi that spiritual plant husbands have been summoned on a large scale. It is obvious that something big is going to happen. Chapter 65, Immortal Cave, Dead Warriors, Road of No Return. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Big event, big event. For a moment, a cloud of doubt filled the hearts of the spirit plant husbands. but who dares not to obey the order of the master? If the spirit fields are confiscated and they are expelled from the Qingyang sect, they can only degenerate and fall into the mortal world, and die in a few months, or they can only go to the deep mountains and old forests to fight for their lives with the rampant monsters. In the end, they still end up dead. Therefore, although the spirit plant husbands are of low status, they are also protected by the Qingyang sect. No matter what time, it is better to be alive than dead. As soon as Niu Yuyang left, there were already spirit plant husbands who set off for the market. Since they dare not disobey, why not arrive earlier and get some news earlier, which is also a little advantage. Even if they don't get anything, it's good to grab the first 2 rows of so many. Spirit plant husbands, seeing the monks around him setting off one by one, Chen Mo did not leave in a hurry, but returned to the house, combed the feathers of 4 larger spirit chickens, and spent half an hour to pack up the things in the room. After the house was properly arranged, he set off. He always had a bad premonition that something big was going to happen in Xian Peak. However, with his realm and status, he was not enough to know the things behind. Now Chen Mo is very clear about his position, just a chess piece that can be manipulated by anyone. And if you want to jump out of the chess and become the one holding the chess piece, there is only one way: to become stronger. Become stronger. Relationships, teachers, etc. are all false. Only strength is the only reliance for survival. Along the way, Chen Mo used the spirit snake body skills and quickly caught up with the large group that had set out long ago, but he mixed in the crowd, not showing his mountain or water, just like an ordinary spirit plant husband. It took less than half an hour for Chen Mo to arrive at the open space in front of the Guchen market. Hundreds of spirit plant husbands had gathered here at this moment. They were whispering to each other, asking what happened to the market. What happened to Xian Peak? There was such a big scene. It was really unbelievable. Soon, 2 hours had passed. The owner of the market, Niu Yuyang, slowly walked out from behind the tall gate. Next to him stood the arrogant man, Mo Junqing, and there was no sign of Li Shangxian. With the appearance of the owner of the market, the crowd instantly quieted down. Everyone looked up, waiting for the announcement of this big event. Uncle Mo, let me announce it. Nonsense, if it's not you, then it's me. Hurry up and finish. Obviously, Mo Junqing didn't even give the owner of the market face. However, Niu Yuyang did not dare to be unhappy. He smiled awkwardly and announced. Xian Peak has issued an order. All cultivators above the 3rd level of qi refining in the market are recruited to join the army and go to Huangyan Peak to explore the secret realm in 3 days. All spiritual plant husbands above the 3rd level of qi refining in Guchen market, please stand up. Order. Naked order. At this moment, Chen Mo's heart sank to the bottom. Huang Yunfeng, he kept thinking about this place, and suddenly a sentence and a figure appeared in his mind. Wang Li Xiao. Immortal cave. That's right. Chen Mo was 70% sure that the secret realm the owner of the market was the immortal cave that was restricted and could only be entered by cultivators below the 3rd level of qi refining. 2 years ago, it was only open to the public in a small range, and going or not was entirely voluntary. But why did it become mandatory today? All spiritual plant husbands above the 3rd level of qi refining, none of them can escape. Unexpected things happen. I didn't expect that just when his farming career was getting better, it would suddenly encounter such a change. Chen Mo knew his situation very well. His talent, bones, even luck and fortune were mediocre. It was impossible for him to survive in a desperate situation where there was no hope of survival. He had only one goal. To farm and raise chickens quietly, and even raise fish in the Buyuwa spirit pond in the future. At the same time, use the accumulated resources to strengthen himself little by little, instead of taking risks to fight for an illusory or even illusory future. Doubts rose and fell in the crowd. We have been drafted into the army, so what should we do with the spiritual fields? It's barren. Niu Yuyang said in a low voice, it's just some spiritual fields. They were already barren last year. What if they are barren again this year? The only ones who will starve to death are those spiritual plant husbands. I'm a spiritual cultivation officer, can I not go? Whether it's a spiritual plant husband, a spiritual cultivation officer, or even a spiritual fisherman, as long as they are above the third level of qi refining, they all have to go. Niu Yuliang was a little impatient. This was a death order personally issued by the head of Xian Peak. Unless he, the head of the shop, didn't want to live, how could he disobey the other party's decision? Chen Mo listened carefully and his only hope was shattered. Head of the shop, what about us? At this time, Miao Chen in the crowd took the initiative to ask. The cultivators of the second and first levels of qi refining volunteered to go. Fortunately, there were hundreds of spiritual plant husbands, and less than 50 of them were above the third level of qi refining. Most people breathed a sigh of relief. Niu Yuliang glanced at the crowd below and continued, all spiritual plant husbands who participated in this exploration of the secret realm, once the mission is completed, no matter how talented or how old they are, can become disciples of the head of Xian Peak and become second-generation disciples. Hiss. As soon as these words came out, the whole crowd was in an uproar. The Peak Master's disciples. What kind of great opportunity is this? For these spiritual plant husbands, it is a step to heaven. I didn't expect there would be such a good thing. The spiritual plant husbands of the first and second levels of qi refining, who were not interested just now, are almost eager to try, just wanting this huge wealth to fall on their heads. However, those spiritual plant husbands of the third and fourth levels of qi refining are hesitant. Being able to cultivate to the third and fourth levels naturally has its own information channels. Although they have never been to the so-called secret realm, they all know that it is the immortal cave that was previously reported. Many disciples of Xian Peak have died there. Obviously, this time, they want to pile up with human lives. Pile up one unstoppable and one road to heaven. Xian Peak may eventually break through the cave and get the immortal inheritance inside, but they entered on the corpses of spiritual plant husbands. Master, I voluntarily withdraw from the market and leave Qingyang. Before the voice fell, a sword energy broke through the air. In the blink of an eye, the person who spoke had been beheaded, blood splattered everywhere, and the faces of the spiritual plant husbands around him became hot, but their hearts turned cold. Who else wants to talk nonsense? That the person who took action and the person who spoke were all Mo Junqing. The reason why he didn't leave was to monitor and suppress. Anyone who disobeys will die. Deathly silent, the crowd was as silent as death. No one dared to mention leaving again. Come forward and register. Niu Yuliang waved his hand, and a long scroll floated in the air and slowly unfolded. Chapter 66 Rescue. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The owner of the shop gave the order, and hundreds of spirit plant farmers hesitated and did not step forward. Now, for those who are above the third level of qi refining, go. There is no chance of survival. Don't go. There is no doubt of death. This is forcing them into a desperate situation. The scene became weird for a while. Seeing this, Niu Yuliang's face was dull. He snorted coldly to express his inner anger and said, I don't know what you are worried about. This is the only chance to join Xian Peak. Do you want to farm for a lifetime? Failed to scold, changed to inducement, but who would joke with his own life? At this time, Mo Junqing on the side said impatiently, a few broken spirit plant farmers can't handle it. If I say, sign them all, no one can escape. Niu Yuliang gritted his teeth, and finally, he went down in person. But he would not accept the other party's opinion. After all, although these people are lowly, they are also the foundation of the market. All the pots were taken away at once. How could there be any income in the future? As his eyes swept over, the spiritual energy in his body burst out, and soon all the cultivators with strength exceeding the third level of qi refining were screened out. He walked to a female cultivator in simple clothes and handed over the long scroll expressionlessly. Seeing this, the other party immediately showed a pleading look. Sign or die. Niu Yuliang didn't want to delay any longer. If this kind of trivial matter is not handled well, then Mo Junqing will return to Xian Peak and talk about it, and he won't have to work as the master of the shop anymore. The female cultivator resisted the pressure, took the pen with her right hand trembling, and finally wrote down her name. Enter the market, and you are not allowed to go out within 3 days. Soon, under Niu Yuliang's personal supervision, more than 30 spiritual plant husbands were forced to voluntarily participate in the exploration of the secret realm. Finally, he came to Chen Mo. Chen Mo took a deep breath continuously, without asking more questions or hesitation, but directly wrote down his name. This move surprised Niu Yuliang a little, but he was in a good mood. The other party patted him on the shoulder and said, "That's what it means to be sensible." Sensible. Chen Mo had already cursed the other party's ancestors in his heart. He just knew that any resistance would be useless, so it would be better to be straightforward and think of a countermeasure quickly. Time passed in a flash. Under the coercion of Niu Yuliang, a total of 32 Qi refining level 3 and 9 Qi refining level 4 in Guchen market all entered the market. Among the remaining hundreds of people, there are actually some who are self-important and call themselves the pride of heaven, and actively apply to participate in the exploration of the secret realm. At this point, the recruitment came to an end. Then it was time to set off. Chen Mo entered the familiar Guchen market again and felt a strange atmosphere for the first time. The Bluestone Avenue that was originally bustling and led directly to the center seemed deserted at this time, and all the hawkers on the roadside were driven away. Only a row of market guards wearing green robes and gloomy faces remained. These guards were not highly skilled, but they were all at the 4th level of Qi refining on average. As casual cultivators who were paid by the government, they naturally did not have the helplessness of the Lingzifu who was in danger of losing his job every day. Soon, Chen Mo followed the crowd into the Fangzhou mansion. They were arranged in a courtyard with no house, no bed, and even no chair. A total of 41 people were forced to squeeze together like a group of animals. In the past, these people might have exchanged greetings, talked about their farming experience, or talked about everything, which was also a kind of fun, but now, the crisis is at hand. Who still has the heart to communicate? Chen Mo mixed in the crowd and also couldn't come up with any ideas. Just as he began to adjust his mentality and tried to accept this reality, a familiar figure came into the side yard under the guidance of the guards. "Manager Cui, it's him." Song Yunxi's steps were a little frivolous, and he seemed very anxious. Song Yunxi also got this news after the Lingzifu entered the Fengshe in the morning. What is the secret realm? How could he not know? I don't know how many cultivators died in Xian Peak. Although they are only at the 3rd level of Qi refining, they are the elites among the elites. The elites can't handle it, so why send a group of spiritual plant husbands who can only make rain and fire palms? What's the difference between that and sending them to die? Therefore, after getting this news, Song Yinshi thought of his brother first. Putting aside the breeding issue, he believed that Chen Mo was definitely a friend worth making friends with. Otherwise, he would not take the initiative to become sworn brothers with him and call him brothers. Now, his brother is in trouble. How could he stand by and watch him die? Song Yunshi took the initiative to come to the abbot's mansion and inquired about the news. After learning that it was the order issued by the master of Xian Peak himself, he was at a loss for a while. Just when he was at a loss, a flash of inspiration suddenly came to him. Song Yunshi asked back. The order of the Peak Master said that all spirit plant husbands, including spirit breeding officers and spirit fishermen, must go to the secret realm. That's right. Didn't it say that breeders must go? Well, there are breeders there. What is the seeding rate? The steward immediately became interested. The threshold for breeders is not high. As long as you spend 1 or 2 taels of spirit sand, you can get a copy of the art of breeding. But why do you want a seeding rate of 100 to 1 or even 150 to 1? 20 to 1, Song Yunshi said a little less. 20 to 1. The steward of the Fangzhou mansion immediately became interested. It is said that the breeder of the Niu family shop is at this level. Yes. What's his name? Chen Mo. The steward spread out the scroll and saw the name on it. So, the breeder was also imprisoned in the side yard. Song Yunshi was delighted. It seemed that the rescue plan was feasible. Steward Cui, you see. This is a bit difficult to handle. Cui Ji showed an embarrassed expression. The Peak Master didn't say it, but this name has already. Song Yunshi took out a low-grade spirit stone from the storage ring and handed it over. A little thought. This time, in order to rescue Chen Mo, Song Yunshi did not hesitate to spend a lot of money. After Chui Ji took it, his brows relaxed immediately. This is not impossible. Then please help him put his name. No hurry, no hurry, I have to see if he is really a breeder first. Let him go. Let's go. So the two were led by the guards and soon came to the side yard where the spirit plant husband was imprisoned. As soon as they approached, Song Yunshi and Chen Mo looked at each other, and he saw surprise in each other's eyes. Manager Chui, that's him. A group of people stepped forward and blocked Chen Mo. Song Yunshi smiled at him, and this smile also warmed Chen Mo's heart. Are you a breeder? In an instant, Chen Mo's mind was full of thoughts, and he sorted out the current situation in a very short time. He looked at Song Yunshi, who put his hand aside and quietly gestured a 2. After a brief hesitation, he nodded and said. Yes. How is the seed yield? 20-1. Here, this is 10 kilograms of spiritual rice, let me see how to grow it. Chui Ji took out a bag of grain out of thin air and handed it over. Chapter 67, Continue to be a spiritual plant husband. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Opportunity. This may be Chen Mo's only chance. He held his breath and stared, devoting himself to the breeding of qi. With his current proficiency, as long as no one cuts his neck with a knife, there is no way anything will go wrong. Soon, 10 kilograms of spiritual rice were transformed one by one. This is 5 taels of spiritual seeds. Chen Mo brought the spiritual seeds he had bred to Chui Ji. The other party checked it, nodded with satisfaction, and said, not bad, come with me. After that, he turned around and left. Song Yunshi stepped forward, hugged Chen Mo's shoulders, and whispered, this matter scared me. Thank you, Brother Song. Chen Mo clasped his hands and thanked him sincerely. If it weren't for the other party, he would have to go to the Immortal cave in 2 days. At that time, all his efforts over the years would come to nothing. No way. What's the relationship between us? We've been to the Wenxiang pavilion together. In a moment. Breeder, I'm a breeder too. Me too. In the crowd, someone among the spiritual plant husbands who had just witnessed that scene shouted out eagerly, perhaps, this is their only hope. 7 or 8 spiritual plant husbands surrounded him and blocked Chui Ji's way. The manager of the Niu mansion frowned with dissatisfaction. These lowly guys actually dared to block his way. Don't you want to live? Breeder? What's your seeding rate? 100-1. Get lost. Chui Ji glared with anger and shouted in a deep voice. I'm 80-1. I'm also 80-1. I'm 70. I'm 60. Chui Ji was annoyed by the chirping of birds. If any of you can produce 20-1 seeds like him, I'll take him away. 20-1. The one who shouted 100 first was suddenly speechless. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Where does he get so much spiritual rice to practice the art of crossing the air? For a moment, the eyes of these spiritual plant husbands looking at Chen Mo were full of doubt. They worked hard to save a little spiritual rice every year, which was used to practice the art of crossing the air, just to practice this spell to a small success one day, so as to completely get rid of the identity of spiritual plant husbands and join the market. But 8 or 9 years, more than 10 years have passed, and now they are only at the entry and proficiency level. Every step forward requires a lot of spiritual rice to feed. But how can they have so much? At this moment, the last ray of light of the spiritual plant husbands who just had the fire of hope in their eyes was completely extinguished. What awaits them will be an endless abyss and despair. Chui Ji snorted coldly, then left the side yard with his hands behind his back. Song Yunshi and Chen Mo followed quickly and finally walked out of the pig cage-like courtyard. The door of the courtyard was closed. The hope of life of 40 spiritual plant husbands was also closed. One step away, life and death are set here. Chen Mo breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, he was extremely fortunate that he had practiced the air transfer technique and became a breeder. Chui Ji led the two to the wing room, spread out the long scroll again, and wiped Chen Mo's name on it with spiritual energy in front of them. For them, writing or erasing names is just a matter of raising hands, but if there is no reason, even Niu Fangzhu can't do this. Thank you, Manager Chui. Song Yinshi pulled the corner of Chen Mo's clothes. Thank you, Manager Cui. I am just doing things impartially. Cui Ji looked at Song Yinshi meaningfully. This matter was considered as selling a favor to the other party. After all, the other party also had an uncle who served as an elder in Xian Peak. In addition, breeders with a seed rate of more than 30 can be exempted from conscription, which is also something that Xian Peak specifically stated. Therefore, Cui Jidu did not need to alarm the abbot and did it himself. What's more, the other party was so sensible that he gave him a low-grade spirit stone. No way. Manager Cui, my brother Chen and I have both remembered this favor. Song Yinshi clasped his hands and thanked again. Brother? That's right. Brother Chen and I have become sworn brothers. Song Yinshi did not shy away from his relationship with Chen Mo. After this incident, he also understood a truth. Instead of hiding it, it is better to make it public, which can also be regarded as providing a shelter for brother Chen. Of course, it is not himself who is protecting the other party, but the uncle behind him. Cui Ji looked Chen Mo up and down, then smiled and said, Okay, if you have any problems in the future, you can come to me at any time. That if other spiritual plant husbands heard this, it would definitely cause a commotion. Who is this person in front of him? He is the steward of the Fangzhou mansion. Even if he is not second to none, he can stomp his feet and shake the whole market 3 times. Thank you, Steward Cui. If I bother you in the future, please forgive me. No way. The 3 of them exchanged a few words and finally said goodbye to the Fangzhou mansion. Chen Mo stepped over the threshold and left the high-ranking courtyard. He suddenly felt a sense of dislocation after surviving a disaster. Half an hour ago, he was still worried about his safety, but he didn't expect that the crisis would be easily resolved in a blink of an eye. Brother Chen, you have turned a disaster into a blessing today. You have met Steward Cui, and it will be easier to move in the market in the future. Song Yinshi did not intend to tell the other party that he had spent a piece of low-grade spiritual stone. In his opinion, it was spent. There was no need to let the other party think about it, or even try to return it to him. Brother Song. It's all because of your kindness. Chen Mo knew very well that the other party let him go and even said that because he was giving Song Yinshi face. In that case, why don't we go to Wenxiang Pavilion for a drink? Okay. How about I treat you today? Chen Mo still has 24 taels of spiritual sand, which is enough for just one night. Okay. I won't be polite to you today. Song Yinshi laughed loudly without any excuses. The two came to Wenxiang Pavilion side by side. This is Chen Mo's 3rd time to this place, but today he feels that things have changed. Hong Yan, who used to stand at the door to invite guests, is not there. When he walked in, he saw a group of beautiful girls sitting in the hall, chatting and practicing, and there were almost no guests. The incident at Xian Peak also affected them. The casual cultivators were all driven away, or fled, so who would come to patronize? The bored crowd listened to the footsteps and immediately raised their heads and looked over. It was normal when they saw Song Yinshi, but when Yushi saw Chen Mo, her eyes were full of doubts, and when she looked at Hong Yan, she was also a little surprised. Isn't he a spiritual plant husband? Yushi asked. Just now, the 2 of them were still talking about the interesting spiritual plant husband who might be unavoidable to be called up, and whether he could come back alive was still unknown. Unexpectedly, in a blink of an eye, the other person stood in front of them. Is he an ordinary spiritual plant husband? Hong Yan asked back. Now he has stood up and greeted him with a smile. Chapter 68 Fragrant 2nd Level Spiritual Rice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If the incident at Xian Peak was a bloody storm, then Chen Mo could at best be considered an insignificant pawn in it, but in this turbulent situation, for any pawn, it is a matter of life and death that is earth-shattering. 20 taels of spiritual sand were squandered in one night. Early on the next morning, Chen Mo said goodbye to Song Yinshi, who was still resting, and returned to his spiritual field early. This incident also made him realize the importance of power in addition to strength, especially when you are weak. A stable backer is the protector on the road of growth. Otherwise, even if you have a lot of talent, it will be difficult to rise all the way to the top. Back at the cabin, Xiao was pecking the buttocks of 3 other spiritual birds with his sharp beak. forcing his kind to run with him. In his view, life lies in movement. What do you mean by saying that you sleep when you are full and eat when you sleep when you are full? A joke. Xiao Kang looked at Chen Mo with a hint of disdain in his eyes, as if to say, damn ghost, do you still know how to come back? What do you mean by that look in your eyes? I'm not going out to play. Chen Mo was a bit dumbfounded. After nearly 4 months of getting along day and night, he gradually developed a tacit understanding with this unique and excited chicken. Its spirituality is extremely high, and there are almost no barriers to communication. The only drawback is eating. One chicken needs to eat 6 chickens. It's not any bigger than other chickens. All the spiritual grains and spiritual insects it ate were run away by it. How about that? Let me go out for a walk today. Upon hearing the word go out, Xiao Kang's cross-eyed eyes instantly became more cross-eyed. It sang loudly in agreement. However, firstly, you are not allowed to run around, and secondly, you are not allowed to destroy the crops in the fields. If you agree, I will let you out. Chi chi chi. Chi chi chi. Okay, remember to take care of your other 3 little brothers. If one gets lost, you'll have to take care of it. Chi-chi-chi, chi-chi-chi-chi. Chen Mo smiled, and the haze of yesterday was completely swept away at this moment. Until today, he has some understanding of those people who kept pets in his previous life. This may also be another kind of spiritual comfort. He turned around and opened the door. Suddenly, an afterimage flashed in front of him. The next moment, Xiao Kang disappeared in the room. Holy shit! Chen Mo looked at it running like a child and immediately felt regretful, seeing the shadow getting smaller and smaller, and disappearing in an instant. He was thinking, will this chicken come back? However, not long after this thought came to mind, Xiao Kang's figure grew bigger and bigger. After a few breaths, he ran to Chen Mo's feet. After pecking him gently, he ran away again and disappeared. This speed seems to be a little faster than when I used the spiritual snake body technique, right? Chen Mo secretly guessed that this was the first time in 4 months that he saw Xiao Kang running at full speed. It seems that keeping it in a cabin these days is still aggravating it. After a while, 3 other clumsy spiritual birds poked their heads out and wandered out. The outside world is like a new world, full of curiosity and awe. Different from Xiao Kang's running back and forth, these 3 chicks walked aimlessly, walking and walking, farther and farther. Seeing that he was about to walk out of the spirit field, Chen Mo was about to rush back when a fleeting afterimage floated by and pecked the other 3 chicks hard on the backs, driving them back. Just like this, whenever they were about to run away, Xiao Kang would appear from nowhere and lead them back to the right path. Chen Mo didn't expect that it actually had the talent of a shepherd dog. In this case, he felt much more relieved. With Xiao Kang here, you don't have to worry about other chickens getting lost even if they are free range. After looking at it for a while, Chen Mo's eyes wandered around the small wooden house. He was considering whether to build a chicken coop next to the house. In the future, if he raised more and more spiritual birds, wouldn't he keep them all in his own home? But here comes the problem. When building a chicken coop, you must set up a formation, otherwise at night, you will be taken over by evil spirits, which will be a big loss. It seems that building chicken coops, cow sheds, and pig pens should also be put on the agenda. The chicken coop and cow shed have been built. Do I need to expand my little shabby wooden house? The house has been expanded. Does the defensive formation need to be upgraded? Is it necessary to make it more personalized? But my thoughts wandered further and further, and finally. Spiritual stone. Spiritual stone. Spiritual stone. Chen Mo talked about the spirit stone 3 times. With the bonus of talent, his speed of earning spiritual stones is actually not slow, but you need spiritual stones to buy the exercises, and you need spiritual stones to buy the storage ring, right? Ask someone to set up a formation and ask for spiritual stones, right? Do you need spiritual stones to practice? Even going to Wenxiang Pavilion requires spirit stones. Spiritual stones are needed everywhere. A piece of spiritual stone stumps the heroic man. Chen Mo smiled bitterly and shook his head. That's all, let's finish harvesting this crop of spiritual rice first. The door of the cabin was open. He took out a small grain bag from the drawer of the bedboard and grabbed 2 second-order Xuani lingmi from it. During the 4 months, Chen Mo occasionally opened it and looked at it, but he was never willing to eat it. Now, having almost experienced life and death, he decided to try the second-order Xuani lingmi, which was 10 times more expensive. He carefully peeled off the chaff and put it away, preparing to change the taste for Xiao Kang later. Wash rice, boil water, and cook rice. After a while, a bowl of fragrant spiritual rice was brought out. While it was still cooking, the spiritual rice was fragrant and refreshing. The spiritual energy that escaped was much stronger than that of the spiritual yellow rice. Chen Mo picked up a piece, chewed it and swallowed it. Suddenly, a warm current surged up, and the spiritual energy in his body was instantly replenished. While he tasted the delicious food, he felt the changes in his body. When the last mouthful of rice was swallowed, he quickly sat cross-legged and began to mobilize the spiritual energy in his body to flow. Finally, after half an hour, the gentle spiritual energy was completely refined. Open the panel. The experience value has not changed. The effect of the second-level spiritual rice is very strong, but it is not to the point of a panacea. However, any cultivator who has eaten Xuani spiritual rice will find it difficult to swallow the first-level spiritual yellow rice again. While it was still early, Chen Mo drove Xiao Kang and the others back to the house. It was time to go out for a walk, and they couldn't be allowed to get wild. After closing the door, Chen Mo walked into the spiritual field. The green rice field instantly became golden. From the outside, the 15 acres of land was still growing, but from the inside, it would be harvested in less than a month. He walked through the rice field, sat cross-legged on the futon, and practiced meditation. He held the only low-grade spiritual stone in his hand, and his 5 hearts were facing the origin. Time passed. After about an hour, it was noon. Chen Mo suddenly opened his eyes, frowned, and then stood up and ran. Outside the spiritual field, He Jiping and Miao Chen were walking towards his field in a sneaky way. Chapter 69, Secret Realm, Immortal Cave and Evil Spirits. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Fellow Taoist He, how about we divide these 15 acres of spiritual fields? When the time comes, we can collect and hide the spiritual rice before the grain collector comes. How about that? Yesterday evening, on the way back, Miao Chen discussed this matter with He Jiping. They are not stupid at all. They are unwilling to go to the secret realm of the 3rd level of qi refining. What use are they with their realm and magic skills? Are they going to die? Of course, the happiest people in this matter are the cultivators of the 2nd level of qi refining. All the colleagues who were riding on their heads are dead, so they have become the strongest, right? He Jiping nodded and agreed, but he was thinking about how to get more. Okay, but we have to split the spiritual field management in half. Fellow Taoist He, your rainmaking technique is better than mine. That the two talked and walked, and in a blink of an eye they reached the edge of the spiritual field. Seeing that they were about to enter, they were already chatting enthusiastically. Suddenly, 2 flame palms broke through the air. The next moment, it accurately hit the chest of the two, and they flew backwards. His body crushed the spiritual rice in a field, half of his buttocks sank into the mud, and the clothes on his chest were all burned, and at this moment, there was still a spark of fire. He Jiping and Miao Chen, who had not yet reacted, widened their eyes. Soon, a figure slowly walked over. Their pupils gradually enlarged, and their eyes were full of horror. He Jiping swallowed a mouthful of saliva, not daring to make any other movements. Next time you trespass into my spiritual field, it won't be as simple as a palm. Chen Mo's tone was cold, making people feel a chill. Miao Chen and He Jiping couldn't help shivering. He nodded quickly, saying, yes, yes, yes. The 2 cultivators looked at each other until the other party walked away and disappeared completely. Didn't he get called away? How could he disobey the order of Xian Peak? Suddenly, a terrifying thought slowly rose in their minds. This seemingly ordinary fellow spiritual plant husband seems to have a great background and a great background. Chen Mo's appearance itself is more intimidating than those 2 flame palms, and this time, the 2 men were completely subdued. I believe that even if they have the courage, they will not dare to come and cause bad luck. In the following days, everything is the same as before, raining when it rains, weeding when it weeds, practicing when it practices. After getting used to this kind of hard life, Chen Mo feels that the liver itself is also a kind of fun. 3 days passed in a flash, the spiritual field is still the same as yesterday. But the ancient dust market ushered in a commotion, more than 40 spiritual plant husbands with 3 or 4 levels of qi training said they were led, but in fact they were driven from the market to the junction of Xian Peak and Huangyun Peak. This time, even the owner Niu Yuyang personally supported the battle. Any cultivator who dared to escape would have only one result waiting for them: death. This group of people walked for 3 whole days before reaching the border from the foot of Xian Peak. Guchen Market was located in a remote area, so it only took 3 days to arrive. As for the markets on the other side of the mountain, some of them had already set off half a month ago, and they just arrived together now. There were a total of 37 markets in Xian Peak, and each market had about 60 to 70 people. When these people from Guchen Market arrived, more than half of the cultivators were already waiting here. There were thousands of people. If this force was placed in the mortal world, it would easily overthrow a country. But in the cultivation world, they were just cannon fodder for sacrifice. After Niu Yuyang drove the team to the main force, he handed the group of people over to the disciples of Xian Peak for unified management, and he went forward to greet the masters of other markets. These cultivators were originally disciples of Xian Peak, however, they had limited talent and had something in mind, so they had to use their resources and relationships to finally earn a position as the master of a market. The status is neither high nor low, and it is also a force that cannot be underestimated in Xian Peak. Here, the masters of the fangs who are stepping on flying swords are talking and laughing, and some even take out wine and food and clink glasses. After not seeing each other for a long time, the disciples of Xian Peak, who used to call each other brothers, are enjoying the joy of reuniting after a long separation. And below, a group of spiritual plant husbands who have almost seen the end of the game are all silent and silent. Once, they thought that they could get the status of spiritual plant husbands, which was half a step into the immortal gate, and they were naturally proud of it. They also boasted that they had shed blood and sweat for the Fengshe and the immortal gate, and Xian Peak would definitely treat them well. But what about now? Now, they finally realize that the so-called spiritual plant husbands incorporated into the Fengshe are just a group of insignificant chess pieces that can be sacrificed at any time. Except for themselves, no one will care about their life or death. The crowd waited for several days in fear of the unknown. Finally, the cannon fodder army of the spirit plant husbands from the 37 market towns has arrived. Li Shangxian, who had been guarding here for a long time, stepped lightly on his toes and came to the elder of Xian Peak. Elder son. Everyone is here. Sun Changyu glanced at them with a disdainful look, and after a sneer on his lips, he said, "First, organize 20 people at the 3rd level of qi refining to go in." Yes. Li Shangxian stepped on the flying sword and did not give the spirit plant husbands a chance to make the decision. He picked out 20 people from the crowd. Soon, he led them to a mountain stream not far away. The water was gurgling and the smoke was lingering. It was like a fairyland on earth. Li Shangxian pointed to the cliff ahead and ordered, "Go in." "Shangxian, this is the wall. I'm only going to say it once, enter or die." Deterrence is always the simplest and fastest way. There were still thousands of people behind him, and Li Shangxian had no time to talk nonsense with these spiritual masters. Among the crowd, Li Fu came from Guchenfang City and was among the first to accept his fate. At this time, he swallowed, subconsciously clenched his fists hard, and finally took a step forward. Just as they were about to approach the cliff, 7 or 8 figures suddenly appeared out of thin air. Li Fu took a closer look. These monsters have multiple pairs of compound eyes and heads as big as elephants, but their bodies are as dry as firewood. With extremely fast speed and sharp claws, they were about to tear through everyone's Tianling cap. Several sword energy shot out, instantly piercing the heads of these 7 or 8 evil spirits. In shock, Li Fu turned around and glanced at Li Shangxian, but the other person had a cold face and said, "Come in." Finally, the group of people braved the situation and came to the cliff. They slowly reached out their hands and tried to touch, but in the next moment, a huge attraction pulled them, and instantly, in the blink of an eye, 20 monks at the 3rd level of qi refining disappeared into the cliff. Li Shangxian witnessed all this and frowned. The attraction to the 3rd level of qi refining is getting bigger and bigger. It seems that the restrictions inside have indeed consumed a lot. With at most 10 more batches, we can enter the 4th level of qi refining. Chapter 76,000 Gene. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The fighting and wailing between Huang and Xian peaks did not alarm the monks who were busy farming in the distance. It was midsummer. Over there, a group of spiritual plant farmers were still working in the fields with their faces to the lus and their backs to the sky. At the foot of Xian Peak, there was a green scene. After experiencing an insect disaster, the land was reborn again. They took good care of the land on which they depended for survival, even more than in previous years. In the past, they didn't care about a weed or a puddle of insect pests, but this year, they paid attention to it all the time and cleared it out completely. The spiritual plant farmers were busy, and their figures could always be seen in the fields. On this day, Chen Mo's door was open, and the 4 little chickens in the house were nowhere to be seen, walking along the long ridge, in the image of the wind blowing the rice fragrance. It was like another scene. At this time, Chen Mo held a special sickle in one hand and a handful of rice ears in the other hand. He cut them back with force and then neatly stacked them on the ridge behind him. At his feet, Xiao Kang and 3 other chickens were pecking at the rice ears that fell on the ground frantically. This time, they also got Chen Mo's consent, otherwise it would be impossible for them to pick up such a big leak. After a while, the 3 spiritual birds were full and wandered around the ground. Only Xiao Kang was still following Chen Mo diligently. When Chen Mo cut a handful, it nodded like pounding rice and pecked wildly. While eating, a powerful flying kick kicked it away, but Xiao Kang did a Thomas turn in the air and landed steadily on the ground. Such unexpected attacks have long been accustomed to it. At first, Xiao Kang would stand there and look at the instigator with a resentful look, but now, it won't delay it from eating the spiritual rice. It used to eat husks. How could it have eaten such good things? And it's a buffet. Isn't it going to eat to death? Eat, eat, eat. Still eating, Chen Mo saw Xiao Kang facing him and continued to peck at the spiritual rice that fell on the ground, and he was furious. These spiritual rice scattered on the ground would have taken a lot of effort to pick them up in previous years. This year, he was rich and powerful, so he naturally looked down on the rice weighing more than 10 or 20 kilograms. So he let the 4 chickens walk into the photo-keeping formation and eat a buffet. However, even so, he still underestimated Xiao Kang's appetite. The other 3 chickens ate at most 1 or 2 kilograms in total, but now, Xiao Kang alone probably ate 3 or 4 kilograms. The key is that there is no sign of stopping. I think you should stop being a chicken and be a pig, Chen Mo scolded angrily, and wiped the sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. On the other side, Xiao Kang ignored him and ran around and ate everywhere, as if he had entered heaven. After a day's work, the 15 acres of spiritual fields were finally harvested, and a large amount of spiritual rice was piled in the image retention array. At this time, Xiao Kang was finally full and began to run wildly to digest the food. Chen Mo straightened his waist, supported his back, stood in place and circulated the Yangqi Ju, and the soreness in his body finally eased a lot. Even though he had been farming for so many years, every harvest took a lot of effort and energy. Now 15 acres of spiritual fields are not bad. As a cultivator, you can finish it in one day, but what about in the future? 50 acres, 100 acres, or even thousands of acres. Chen Mo's positioning is very clear, just a farmer and chicken farmer, but his goal is far more than the current 1 acre and 3 points of land. He wants to grow more and more grain, raise more and more chickens. But a person's energy is limited after all. Should I practice a spell that can split my body? Or learn mechanical engineering? However, during the rest time, Chen Mo began to daydream aimlessly. Of course, this was still a distant future for him. He turned his head and glanced. Xiao Kang, who had finished digesting, started eating again. He kicked, then a chick flapped its wings and landed in front of the cabin. You're still eating. Chen Mo also walked out slowly. Xiao Kang turned his head to look at him and ran into the house. Behind him, the other 3 chicks staggered back. The second day, the third day, Chen Mo spent another day beating the harvested linghuang rice into ears, drying it with a flame palm to force out the water, and finally packing it in bags. The whole harvesting process took 3 full days. On the 4th day, he burned the straw in the field with a fire, turned it into ash, and sprinkled it on the field, tilling the soil and watering. Another busy day. On the 5th day, the 5 caddies of spiritual yellow rice seeds that had been prepared long ago were sprinkled into the ground, and another round of planting began. Finally, after finishing the work in the field, Chen Mo had time to take care of the harvested spiritual rice, 15 acres of spiritual fields, 400 caddies per acre. A total of 6,000 caddies were harvested. The most intuitive conversion is the 30 neatly stacked and bulging grain bags. Each bag contains 200 caddies. Such a huge number is unimaginable for any spiritual plant farmer in Guchenfang City. 6,000 caddies without paying taxes. After selling it, it will be 600 taels of spiritual sand, which is enough for them to use for 10 or 20 years. However, for Chen Mo, who has had a glimpse of the true background of the cultivation world and has no ambitions, 6,000 kilograms is only 6 pieces of low-grade spirit stones. Even the 12 skills of the Qinyang sect's Qi training realm alone cost 5 pieces. Low-grade spiritual stone. This little spiritual stone is not enough. Chen Mo looked at the 30 bags of food and felt troubled for a moment. That's right, his little cart can hold up to 10 bags at a time, and it can't fit any more. To whom should these grains be sold? How to sell? It's midsummer, where did these spiritual rice come from? How to explain this? In fact, Chen Mo could also consider keeping the grains for the time being, sending them to the market together at the end of the year, and finding more companies to sell them to, but then it won't be 30 bags, but a full 4 or 50 bags. That would be harder to deal with. I'm afraid. It's also troublesome to harvest too much grain. After much thought, Chen Mo finally thought of the number 1, 2, and 3 grain stations and Song Yinshi. He went to Guchenfang City empty-handed. Near noon, Mei Hua returned to Lingtian with him with a storage ring. The waiter at the grain station was stunned when he saw that the room was packed with 5,000 to 6,000 kilograms of spiritual rice. This is all your fault. Mei Hua widened her eyes and looked at Chen Mo in disbelief. Even speaking became a bit stuttering. Shoo! Chen Mo made a gesture of silence. Mei Hua's expression was a little sour, but she still put the 30 bags of grain into the storage ring as requested. He asked on the way here, it's not the autumn harvest yet. Where will the food come from? But the other party always had a mysterious look on his face, and always tried to offend him by saying, we'll talk about it later. That just prevaricate. Originally, Mei Hua thought it was only a few hundred kilograms of spiritual rice. Even with some imagination, he couldn't accept that it weighed 5,000 or 6,000 pounds.